Let us take a look today at stress. Again, but we're going to do it from a physical health standpoint. So I'm kind of updating our stress model, if you will. Before I've said that stress is more of an indicator to something that is off in the health system, where we generally just feel that it's something that happens to us and we try to just get rid of it as quick as possible with any several ways of repressing, depressing, or removing this thing. Generally, we don't learn what it is, we just want to get rid of it. Now, to kind of update the previous model from the, let's say, mental health aspect, where we want to find out where this stressor is coming from because it's an indicator that something's off, to the emotional realm, like, okay, well, this stressor has to be an emotional thing. It's kind of hard to find, but there's a relief after. It's not as easy to point out as a physical thing. In fact, it's more of a symbol or seen in symbolism of the thing that we think is causing us stress. So that's kind of the emotional realm of it. And now on to the physical. Now, in the physical way of looking at stress, we realize that, actually the best way to kind of explain it is that we always say kind of stress is the cause of all illnesses. You know, when you look it up, you know, maybe stress related. This can be caused by stress. We hear this often. So we'd say that there are many applications to stress, meaning that we generally just think, you know, with the gas, let's say, theory or principle, the general adaptation to stress, we see that our body goes through different changes to live in the environment that is heavily saturated with stress. However, this is an adaptation to this environment, not necessarily a growth. So we then want to say, if we want growth instead of this adaptation, something instead of growth, then we have to look a little bit deeper into, you know, is it just this one blanket statement of stress? Just like we'd say that a person is emotional, meaning there's several emotions they could be, but is it just a blanket statement? We use stress in the same way. I view from the physical health standpoint that stress actually has specific expressions to essentially balance out each emotion. So for somebody who, let's say, is excessive in anger, there is a style of stress specific to anger that we feel. And this feeling allows us to identify that it's really anger that the issue is. And therefore, it is actually putting the brakes to adding any more anger to it. It's trying to push us back by a kind of feedback of emotion in the opposite direction. Now, we don't particularly spend too much time figuring out the different subtleties of what style of stress is acting on us. We generally just feel that it's acting, and you know, we don't know what to do about it. But I view if we had more clarity on actually how we were feeling, in the sense of it being more than just a thought itself, and it actually being a part of a process of kind of self-evaluation, seeing the environment that surrounds us outside of the purely, let's say, material. So I think if we spent a little more time there, we'd start to see that a person who is not being creative has a style of stress which feels different than a person that is working too much. They would also feel stress, but it wouldn't be the same type. It would have a different flavor. Generally, I would say that stress, if we're going to use it in a general term, we'd be more thinking of it as, because we do not know the answer, or the answer is subconscious, the stress feeling arises because we're not sure what it is. But this is just the general feeling of it. It gets more specific to be correlated to a specific emotion that is being, let's say, either underused or misused in the way that we're thinking about it. So emotions are always very much accurate, but how we think about them, how our mental process is solving for this thing is a little bit off. A quick example I'd say would be somebody who really wants, you know, to be supported, like a hug maybe. That's always my example, hug. But becomes mean to the person closest to them. Although they are being mean, it doesn't particularly mean they don't want the hug. They probably want the hug a lot, so they are being mean. This would be kind of solution, a compensation to getting the hug. we'd say if we had a little more balance in there, we'd be kind to the person that we want the hug from. In fact, we might just ask, hey, you know what, I'm feeling down, can I get a hug? And we might receive that hug immediately. But we'd say that if we didn't do that, which is the most straightforward way, essentially, but there are vulnerabilities in doing that as well. And we'd say if our vulnerabilities are too high, we won't be able to see clearly the emotion that we really want or the response we really want. And then that adds, we'd say confusion, but it adds a kind of resistance to getting what we want, therefore showing us that things need to change if we want that reaction. And generally it's going to be the fact that we have to express some things and be a little bit more vulnerable than we like, especially at a time that we'd like. It's not particularly the time that we want to be vulnerable. It is when we really need something. So it becomes a little bit harder in that dynamic. But my point of all this is just to give a more clear contrast to the fact that stress is not just a blanket statement. There are individual pieces. There might be a general feedback which we associate as stress, but there must always be a balance to a thing. And so my question would be, what is the balance to emotion? What is the thing that puts it back to center? And I'd say that in very much every case, a style of stress is present, because this is the unknown solution to pushing us back to balance. So somebody who's happy all the time generally might not see the pitfalls that are just ahead of them. When they hit them, the feeling of happiness should settle in to more of a physical health standpoint. Now, this is what I thought was going to happen. It didn't happen. So I'm missing some information. How do I gain this information? It's not going to be found maybe in the place I enjoy the most, the happy place, but it's going to be found in a different kind of reflection. And always I find emotions work in the way of creating contrast. So when you go too far one way, you'll start to see the outcomes of what you're trying to do not match up. And therefore, in that pursuit, we realize that we are missing something. And the only way to get a clear picture of it is either to step away and have some reflection, which is going to be some downtime, sometimes really think. And emotions don't solve themselves as quickly as thoughts. It is a longer process to go through these several parts of the emotion. Emotion, I find, is very much tied to experience, and there are lots of pieces to experience. So we are generally just picking out, not really consciously, but picking out the points that stand out the most and addressing them with reflection. And in doing so, allowing us to gain more from our understanding of the emotion and our understanding of experience. We'd say, and I said in a different video, I think, or maybe it was just my notes, that the mental, physical, and emotional system, or these three parts of the emotional system, are really there to filter experience. And when the mental is off, or the emotion is off, or the physical is off, then we have some undigested content, if you will. And this will cause a challenge to how we're getting our end nutrition. So in order to get it appropriately, we will have to address these things. And as we put them back in place, we now get a better digestion of experience, and we can see things clearly, and therefore our thoughts, our emotions, and actions / outcomes are exactly what we thought they would be, meaning that we have taken in the right experience from what has happened without any, let's say, compensation, without any bias, without any judgment, without any misformed or half-formed ideas. And in that way, we are kind of one, if you will, with what is happening. And we have the right outcome at minimal cost to us, at maximum gain to everybody, and therefore we are more appropriately situated in the human environment of health. So hopefully that kind of gives you guys an update. Yeah, thank you very much.